Good morning. Some of you know each other for a long time. Some of you we know only for 3 days, but friendship is something that you have to preserve for life, of course. So when I finished my talk last night, today, I realized that I was not introducing anything about our work techniques, about the projects, the student projects. So I decided, before I start my topic, to give you a very brief overview of the projects. Because I think it's important, because on Tuesday, maybe some of the students want to interact with people from Happy Moves and so on. I think it's good to give you a very brief overview. It's more for our guests and some people that are following us on the internet. So, it's not a complete list. There are other students that are doing other research projects, but this is as I think it is the major topics of the PhD projects and master projects that we have been developing this few years. So actually there are projects that are connected to musical analysis and computer model. There are projects that are connected with interactivity, sound design, machine learning, and so on, improvisation, mediation, and mediation of digital musical instruments, and so on. So that the whole area, maybe it's somehow connected to what we are discussing here, that's computer-aided musical analysis and creation. So I'm not going to stress this is a very brief overview, and I will only give you the titles of the projects in Portuguese, because I suppose if I made some translating, the translator was not so good, I will somehow misunderstand the meaning of the things. So, but of course, the students are here and we can discuss their projects, particularly on Tuesday. Okay? So, some of the projects are the postdoc projects, like the Stephen Shaw analyzing the contemporary music, Tatiana working on methodology of analysis, Charles using techniques of computer modeling. This is the kind of relationship or collaboration that we have with Moreno and Jean Bresson, that you know, but the other maybe don't know. But so, and we have some applications of some analytical application of models of the human ear system, development of new tools also for analysis of contemporary music. Other students, they were using audio descriptors and computer models to help them to compose. So that means, in some ways, the emphasis is more in creative process than in analytical process. So we have this kind of modality here in Brazil that's somehow different from France. So that there are students that they are working, and their work is concerned about creative process. And they are using tools to help them to create music. And this is their research. So in that case, we have Ivan, Vander, and Danilo. So some of the guys that you have already met. So especially Vander, that has drive you in some ways around here and from the hotel and so on. And I guess the third major area of research line I described this morning is not a strong description. It is somehow connected with interactivity with computers and something I say that's mediated performance. So in that case, we have the work of Thiago, that he is working with learning methodologies in artificial intelligence to help composers to choose sounds. Vanya she's a pianist. So I'm not introducing everybody, but they are here. And she is trying to understand the behavior of a pianist according to some models like Laban theory of movement, of motion. And also Clayton, that is the guy that helps everybody here in the mixing that, he's also using models of Laban theory and other models of motion caption to help to construct some sound design creative approach. So others like Gabriel, so he's starting to work what he called the echo improvisation. That's something that connects improvisation with the environment. But on this case, the environment is the DMAs, the musical, digital music instruments. So this is a very brief overview, but I think Gabriel, Vânia, Clayton, Thiago, Stefan, and Tatiana can also express themselves and talk with you on Tuesday. Okay? So this is very brief, and I will also introduce very briefly also some people that have been collaborating with us. So of course, we are collaborating with Happy Moods, that is the group that we were invited. But for example, last year we have been collaborating with the pedagogical department of UNICAMP, and we are organizing a course on computer music analysis containing students from UNICAMP, from Universidade Federal da Paraíba, and some students from UNICAMP together. So using quite similar technology as we have been used today, but more interactive, because the class, they were given simultaneously in João Pessoa, in Campinas, and Paris. So this is one of the collaboration we do with Council, Mikhail Malt, and other things. So that means other people that has been collaborating with us, of course, are people from USP, from the NUSOM and the music department. There are the nucleus with the Panorama Studio that help us to build up this colloquium. Okay? Other people that collaborate with us is Professor Didier Guiguet. He has this group in Universidade Federal da Paraíba that developed these libraries called SOAL. So we have also tried to develop new tools for SOAL using, let's say, new technology in connection to analysis of orchestration, and also we try to combine symbolic analysis of musical material with audio analysis. So we have also collaborated very closely with Professor Paul Verchou from Universidade Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. Some of the things I'm going to discuss with you today, some of the examples were developed with his group. Also, we have been collaborating with Professor Marcelo Vanderlei for a long time. Some of our students have been doing research there at McGill University. And most of the research is concerned to develop interface, develop new instruments to control some aspects of the interactivity, and also some aspects of the computer models that we are using for studying creativity, musical creativity, and also to study performance. So this is a very brief and very short overview, most to introduce the projects. And there are other projects that I didn't mention here. I'm sorry about that, but there are projects that they were supervised by Professor Fornari, Eduardo Fornari, Professor Adolfo, and Professor Rafael, and they may talk about them today on the roundtable and so on. But the idea here is only to give you a very short introduction, because you know somehow how we try to work together. So, ending that, I will most of my talk today is inspired by last roundtable, yesterday roundtable. I didn't change too much my sound examples, but I changed the way I connect them for discussing today. But there is the first example that I'm going to give you, it's somehow stimulated by Jean's class when he showed that there was people that killed MIDI disc clavier. So when he was introducing that, I said to myself, we have also killed the MIDI disc clavier in our lives. So, and to introduce the topic, I decided to introduce you a work that have been worked in 2007 with 3 PhD students, 2 PhD students and 1 master student, that's called Continuamente. So I will play this, and the image is not that good, but it's giving an idea and I'll explain briefly what's going on.
24 horas por dia. Se não acordasse, não o saberia.
So sorry, I saw that the video was not so good as I would wish, sorry, but I suppose it's important to present this example for many reasons. So, of course, there's this connection as I already described, but this piece, this work, introduce one of the aspects that I would like to discuss with you today. And the main idea of this, in terms of musical concept and research concept, is expressed on this slide. So the idea was apply the concept of self-organization as a paradigm for live interactive composition system, for developing a live interactive composition system. And in that way, allowing to come a constant refreshing of the musical structures. So the idea is, if you conceive somehow your composition as a system, if you conceive the way people are going to play your music in a concept of a system or a complex system, you can change a little bit the way you understand is the role of the composer, the role of the performer, and the role of the exposition of the material. So, and of course, the way the things are connected are much more related to improvisation. So we're going to have ways of people dialogue between themselves, but some of the material it's really created in real time at the stage. And the basis for that creation is improvisation. So actually the diagram here tells us a little bit of the way we put everything together. So we have the improvisation is a kind of cloud that somehow glued the interaction between people. We have improvisation, free improvisation, we have improvisation that it's also connected to some graphic scores. We have improvisation that are connected to the way you use the interface. So as you saw, I don't know if you saw clearly, but there are interfaces that are producing sounds by, for example, percussion. We have percussion on the floor. So as we percuss the floor, there's a MIDI signal that was sent to the computer, and the computer distributes these signals in the network, and some of the signal goes to the disc clavier. So that means the disc clavier is somehow an agent of the system. So we consider the sound that is produced by the disc clavier as one of the characters, or one of the agents of the system. So on the other hand, I was there with the performers, we don't have too much distance. So as they produce some inputs, I was trying to interact with them. So we have a kind of a dialogue between the production of the material and the way we, let's say, mount, the way we merge the material. So it's very much also a translation, from my point of view, of the very lonely way of electronic composer work at the electronic studio. They are there, they are trying to find good sounds and so on, but sometimes they are only themselves trying to find it. And this proposal is somehow, how about to use interactivity, how about use improvisation and computer models to bring this whole production structure, this whole production cycle to the stage, and try to make the composer and the performers, and we call here agents, to discuss music with sounds. So this is the idea, most of things that I'm going to discuss today. So as a reference, as a theoretical reference, I will introduce you most of the ideas that are written in this chapter of this book that was released last year from Strungman Forum in Germany. The book is called Language, Music, and the Brain. So there are many talks, and one of the talks I wrote with Professor Overschuh, and we discussed in this chapter what we said as computational modeling of mind and music. We have discussed how can some models that are in recently developed or after the 70s are developed to understand how brain works in computer modeling, in terms of computer modeling, can also dialogue with some aspects of interactive composition. So our claim is very simple. As we have in the traditional artificial intelligence approach, we have this problem of how you really grasp the idea of intelligence using computer models. We also have this problem when we talk about music creativity. And our very simple, or at least answer for that is the answer of my talk today is somehow we need to put agents. We have to think about agents interact among themselves. The agents can be musicians, the agents can be our virtual agents, and the agents can be machines. So that means the concept is to somehow describe the composition and the way people produce music by a system, by a network where things are exchanged using many ways. One of the ways that I will express today is improvisation, but it's not the only way. Okay. My talk landmarks, or I'm gonna now to move to some concepts that were somehow stimulated by yesterday discussion. So I prepared this during this night. That means for sure you're going to see that there is let's say a reaction, or let's say something about these concepts. I will also show you more two examples of this, or let's say live interactive composition, and I will somehow present an idea that can be an open idea to be discussed later on the round table. Okay? So here is a more epistemic point of view. So the idea for me is that we can see that musical notation, the way we represent music, has evolved, as I think, or as we are discussing here, from the symbolic notate pitch expression to the internal organization of the sound. Sound take a place in the music today. So people thinking about sound, how sound also is connected to music production and also to composition. So on the other hand, we have seen people that are developing new techniques to play traditional acoustic instruments, and with that techniques, they are somehow change the way the acoustic instruments are conceived primarily. And also there are people that are developing technology to create interface, to create digital musical instruments. So, I think maybe it's my claim or whatever today, is that these things add new dimensions to the notion of musical information and also to the idea of symbolic representation. We have to enlarge the aspects that we are considered when you discuss musical information, when we discuss the way people produce music, the way people dialogue or conceive music. So the second point is that, so with this new technology that have been somehow emphasized interaction and novel interface. So there's a question that has been raised, a question that maybe we can use interactive composition, live interactive composition, to play a role not only in terms of creative understand of the artistic production, but also take a role of how we understand computers, computer models, and musicians. They are related, how they dialogue among themselves. So that means I'm thinking that live interactive composition is not only a way of producing an artistic artifact, but also it's a way of understand how this interaction between machines and the human can be done. Why? Because I think it is important. Don't forget that all these things are conceived in a very large ecology of machines, ecology of thoughts, ecology of people, ecology of motion, ecology of thinkings. So that means it's very interesting if you try to somehow, in some respect, to put these things together. And where people say, yesterday came out, what's said in the literature, a more situated and externalist view of performance. I will go a little bit further about this concept as my talk is developing. So, is there any question about this? This is the main point of view of this talk. Is clear? Okay. So musical representations. This is a long story. So, and we are coming from notating Neumann's to notate pitch in the score. We change the way we represent. The score itself is a tool to grasp ways of combining material, because the score itself is a technology to see symmetry, is a technology to conceive many things as a tool, as a model. The score itself is a model. So that means there's not much difference in terms of concept. So when we talk about, for example, Zenak's drawings about how we connect some structure of music in SCT, this is the first version of SCT4. So there's somehow a connection between this symbolic representation and a concept, this is my point, a concept of a system, a concept, a way of design the interaction of the material with the tools we are using to articulate the material, for example, performance. But also, computer articulates the material. So that means we have many ways, and the composers articulate, language articulates, this. So now comes this panoply of incredible possibilities of representing music. We can represent music talking about music in this very efficient way. We have been using that for many years. And somehow it's somehow what Stefan Schaus told us at the beginning of his talk. So we have graphics, we have MIDI, algorithm, spectrogram, audio description. These are all ways of somehow representing, somehow express the way music is organized. And today, okay, somehow we have been presented two extreme points here. One we call symbolic, and the other one we call audio. I decided last night to introduce this level that I call process. And I put them between symbolic and audio. What I mean is the concept of process that's connected to the idea of the system. So that means somehow, I think with the computer technology and the concept that we have been used nowadays, there is an interplay between the possibilities of manipulating or conceive process and manipulate audio. So, and as much these models are somehow way of express not only formalization, as we are doing that very well, formalization of musical thought, but this also is a way of interact. Because if you have a model, you can think this model in terms of computer creativity. Is that autonomous, independent? There's no bigger brain than the human brain, or where you go. It doesn't make sense to talk about computer creativity. So I don't know the answer for this, but I will at least express what I think about that. It's clear that was somehow there's a connection about this, about the discussion we had yesterday. Okay, so but I don't think we have to stop. So computer and human, there's no more creativity. So computer is not creative or only human or whatever. So that means there are ways of understanding that. So, and of course, because there are ways, I think research is about understanding things, even if you think this is a difficult topic, that strikes us in some ways. So, of course, there are many problems. So I'm going back to Ada Lovelace's late Byron prophecy. Let's say like that. Ada Lovelace, she said, oh, sometimes in the future, when she is discussing Milton Babbitt engine for making calculations, the first Milton Babbitt, sorry, I make a mistake, make a confusion with the composer. This is for some psychological reason. But anyway, when she was discussing the machine that is a kind of prehistorical computer, she said, oh, this machine that manipulates symbols and manipulates ideas together, will be very useful to make music. One of the main point she stressed at that time, I forgot to put it, but it was in the 19th century, was, well, I don't see a problem that's in very short future. We're going to have machines that are somehow creative, or whatever what's creative is that. Okay? So the second thing is there a computer creative? Well, that means we are competing with computer in terms of creativity. There's a limit for creativity. What's creative? So there has been a very, very long discussion, debate. One of the most traditional answer for that is what Adolf mentioned yesterday. So it's the Turing test. So that means if somebody that is creative says that what is produced with the machine is creative, so there's a connection between that this thing is creative in somehow. So there are many references. So, and that is some aspect is one of the problems we have when we use computer models in music and try to talk about musical statics and computer model. And the second point is I'm saying that despite this debate is somehow the base of the many of emergent computational creativity tools, I don't think it's not only that problem that we can use to define creative. What I mean is they can produce reasonable music, reasonable sounds or whatever, but it's still a question, a deep question that is somehow took by Searle when he's making a debate between the Turing test and the artificial intelligence. And this is let's say, the overall let's say, point that maybe of the surface of the future, that means it sounds like it's not to be equated to emulate the underlying generative process. That what's said is that it sounds like good music. It is not enough to say that it's creative what this machine is producing. So that means the Turing test, there are machines that can pass the Turing test, but from this perspective, they wouldn't be creative. So we have a problem. So that means our judgment sometimes is posed as enough. And for others, it's not enough. So how can we deal with this problem? I really don't know exactly, but what at least I would like to discuss with you today is some ways that we have been working together in terms of creative process, in terms of computer models, and address this process using the very powerful tools that we have in our hands as we are musicians, analysis and creation. But analysis and creation, they were not separate. They were dialogued. It's not like, tell me what's there that I'm going to use. No, it's not at all. I have to evaluate what's there, to feel what I analyze, to produce good music. So that means, of course, the computer model is important to us, and all the analytical process is, of course, it's important. But without our experience with them, we're going to solve the major problem. So creation and analysis, they have to work together. So that because of it, I'm very proud to be here to talk to you. Because I know that you are very concerned about it. Nobody here put more power in analysis and less in creation. We know that. We know that you need these two things to work together. Without this dialogue between this, it will be difficult to solve this problem. Maybe we're not going to solve, but at least we're going to enjoy our lives and see our expressions being played somewhere and being at least expressed part of our thinkings. Okay, and now I'm going to skip a little bit, give you a break about this concept, and I'm going to introduce you another work. And I will perform the work and play the video. The video is much better than the other one. And I will continue my discussion. you can have the video at the internet, but I think it's enough to put my point. So as you saw in the video, at the example, we have a concept of performance of a plot that is based on the idea that two human performance and an avatar controlled by a computer system or interact among themselves. So the role of them is to produce material to be processed by the other. So in the role of the, let's say, the composer or the person that somehow designed the system that I share with other people was to find a way of these three characters, these three agents, talk among themselves. Using tools like sensors, using tools like computer models, and also using tools that's a very strong tool, that's improvisation. But in that sense, what do I mean by improvisation? Of course, improvisation, there's something special. That means for the way you will furnish improvisation in that idea of what makes something now, it's very connected with the concept of trying to adjust concepts with real life. So that means you have a concept, but you have to play the concept. It is nothing without performance. So, of course, the other things that are somehow developed around the plot, or the way we are describing the story, so the story is somehow related to how the percussionists produce sounds to produce the trajectory of the dancer, and how the dance produces motion to be also performed by the avatar. So that means they are remaking material, so that the sound of the percussion is used by the dancer to produce other material that's used by the avatar. So that means the idea is in the name of we have a repercussion, and I like to make jokes, so there are really ways of saying that, but at the latest it's repercussion, or in Portuguese is better. It's a repercussion of the material that is propagated between the agents that is responsible for producing the result. So let's give an idea of how maybe to work or to connect creative and computer models in this way. So we have a lot of things together, trying to adjust, and we have the possibility of explore this material and the dialogue between this material, and understand musical performance, and also as a creative process. Everything is connected to creative when this plot goes to stage, and this is a recreation, not a mere reproduction of a work. And I think, I'm stressed that I think everybody knows that, even in any kind of performance, any kind. But I'm emphasizing that in a way that means we are trying to use the computer models and using the interactions and the way the work is conceived to somehow make it a more clear use of that. Okay? So the second problem that we have with the technologies and the way we can deal with information is called the data delusion. That means, I'm reading, our ability to extract data from natural and artificial phenomena in different scientific disciplines in our area by far exceeds our ability to understand it. So that means, very simple, our sense and the way we capture nature and the way this fill us in terms of brain and body is much more large than the way we have to understand and to make models about that. Our experience is larger than our capacity to talk about our experience. It's a very simple thing. I forgot to switch off mine. Let me stupid. Okay. But anyway, I think it's a clear point here. So that means, what can we do? Okay, no answer for that. Maybe not. Maybe how about to put experience at the center of the research project? How about try to use experience to mediate understanding, understand not only music, but understand other things that we do. But basically we're discussing about music today. So the point is now, is that research proposal that we have been working. So in some ways is that, so music in itself as experience has a large, let's say, a large set of information that can be evaluated and can be put on this paradigm. We know it. We are aware about it. So, but on the other hand, we can may use this approach also to help others to understand their local view about, for example, complexity. So that means, how about to use music and live interactive composition as a tool to help people to understand complexity? So maybe that's possible. So that's one of the things we tried last year. That also I present. Some of you know this example, but I'm going to show you a little bit the video, and you can explain later. So, for some of you, we have seen a small electroacoustic composition, or whatever, maybe a bad one, but it's there. There's a sound, there's an audio material, but what's the purpose of these small electroacoustic composition? Of course, in that sense, these electroacoustic sounds and this very much relate sounds with noise, with audio features. They are used to help people to understand a complex system that is the brain. So we are doing the way around. So that means our experience that has been also used in electroacoustic music by listening to sounds, listen to the spatialization, listen the way the sounds are molded, how the sounds are transformed, can be also a kind of non-verbal language to help people to understand a complex system. Because our experience with this material is complex. So how to try to combine, because at the end, the human is one. The experience is of pain, that is the one of the authors of the article. Myself, Martinez and Verschu, but the experience of that person that was interacting with the environment is similar of our experience. So that means, but now we can somehow use this experience to give cues in the navigation of the structures of the brain by using what? Using timer, sound aspect, change of sound aspects, and change of sound location, change of the sound mode, and so on, in very specific way, using the concept of sound objects as a way of a person, let's say, goes inside this complex structure. So our claim is that, so by using this technology, we are constructing a soundscape that is unique related to the experience of the person that is navigating with the sounds that are there to be explored. And our, let's say, what we guess, what we want to find out is that experience with sound a helpful tool to make people to understand these complexes. But what's in the middle of this is the experience. The experience that is mediated by the computer model and the experience that is mediated by the way we built the sounds. So of course the evaluation of the results we have been trying to evaluate. So we're going to evaluate the results by looking at the behavior of the agent using motion caption and other features, and also we're going to evaluate the produced soundscape. And if somebody goes there and repeats some soundscapes with some coherence, with some organization, it's because these organizations somehow connect to the way this person is perceiving the complexity of this brain jumble. Okay? So I go to the recapitulation of my talk to finish. So I discussed a little bit, I didn't answer the big question, but I give you some examples, okay? And the methodological idea is why an agent and a group of interact with the system. All multimodal signals produced by the agents are captured and analyzed in real time and so stored for future offline and also real time and remote analysis. So that means if you can record them, you can also analyze in real time. We can also analyze in offline. So, and this is the statement for studying music cognition, so creating in its fullness and understand its process of discovery and creativity. It's necessary to examine how the brain and the body work together in the solution of such complex problems. So, and there are some goals, some ideas. So that means how to develop methodology, how to develop tools. So some tools are improvisation, as I've said, using live interactive composition and produce as a way of producing artistic artifact, but also to produce ways of interaction, using visualization of computer models. For example, Jean already showed yesterday something that Charles' work, but also I have another point here that I'd like to start a little bit, is a sonification of a model. Let me express a little bit what I mean by that. Of course, imagine if you make a model of a music, whatever music is, from Bach or from Xenax. Okay, you can make a graphic, a visual representation of that. But imagine now that you use your model to produce sound. But it's not the sound that the composer has produced, but the sound that represents the behavior of the model in the space or wherever. So that means you can use the model and the sound of the model as a way of people have an experience with the model in such a way that people may understand your analysis, understand the way you conceive the piece by its own experience. By performing with sounds, by listening to sounds. So mixed reality installations, as we as for example, Clayton is working, producing creative installation. But now I'm going to stress only one thing that is an idea that somehow is stimulated by one of the ideas came from Adolfo's statement, and the other one was from Gerard's statement yesterday when he talked about instantiation of models, and so on. So I'd like to open or give you some ideas. This is very explorative, let's say, thing about instantiation, convergence, and attractors. So for that, I will need 5 minutes to express what I mean. So I want to try to join instantiation and embodiment in such a way. We have a model, whatever model is, but you can understand this model and you can think about this model. That's one of these instances is the piece, but we have others. Okay, we have already said that, there's no problem about it. So that means one way of understanding this model is this model as a dynamic system. Okay? So that means, of course, if you understand this model as a dynamic system, we have ways of manipulating it, or ever manipulation. But one of the classical ones is to manipulate the boundary conditions and the control parameters. So that means it is not difficult to think that this exploration leads us to a broad space that we are going to produce things or instances. Depends on the way you change the boundary conditions that are maybe or not so even connect with the music, with the piece that stimulate us to produce the model. We go far beyond because here is a kind of freedom to express our creativity in the thing we have developed as we do with musical instruments. Okay? And so on. Maybe this is complete hypothetical. This is a thing I'm putting spontaneous. I don't have completely control of this. But it's a speculation. So some of the things, some of the instantiations in the space where we represent the dynamic system, or what represent the model, they can produce attractors. What I mean by attractors? Situations where even change the parameters, or even change the boundary conditions, they go to there. They are stabilized there. They converge to there. Some of these convergences, they are not talking direct to the composer piece. They are going to be different. Something maybe that sounds like the composer, some not sound like. So now we open the system to an exploration. So that means this model it somehow can be used by composers, by analysis, to somehow be explored in very, very broad sense of artistic expression, also in terms of analysis and creation. So, as we said already, we can have sonification, visualization, and that's what I said in the beginning of my talk, augmented cognition. But one of them that maybe it's very important for us, at least for things I have been talking to Stephanie and some of you at next, is improvisation. Because improvisation, in the time you produce the structure, you are having your body, your brain, and your instrument to produce it. You can't skip. Everything is going on. So that means, for me, it's interesting because in my concept, this is a very short and particular concept. This is my concept of embodiment. So we have a good example in improvisation, but also improvisation in a broad sense, not in the sense of only improvise with instruments, acoustic instruments. We can improvise with computers. We can improvise with other things. And all the things makes for us a possibility of, let's say, extend the concept. If our representation is somehow connected to the model, and the model is a computer model, or whatever model we are using, but in our case, might be a computer model, we also use the mod not only to understand the original problem, but we use the mod to understand some other problems or other things that are connected to creative and to music production. And I think it's a very good way of address the problem of computer creativity. Sorry. So how is I summarize it? So okay, my answer for that is so simple after all this, but I believe in that. So that means propose a dialogue between people, a dialogue between tools and models. So propose a dialogue between live interactive composition with improvisation, digital immersion, and augmented cognition. So combine multimodalities using interactive media and improvisation. Produce digital immersion and augmented cognition as a product of this dialogue. And somehow, using the study, the human cognition, creativity, using large database, generated by computer, or whatever a computer does for the computer models, the sensors that are come from the sound of the machine, the sound of the instruments, and a computer graphic sensor device, music, and okay, it's too much, but anyway, I don't know if I have tools to do all the things, but what I want to stress here, if we want to discuss or understand whatever creative and computer creative is, or what computer model of music is, we don't have to put man and machine in competition. We don't have to say one is better than the other, as we are not better than ourselves. We have to dialogue. We have to put as much power as we have to make these things to dialogue among themselves. And that's the way you can also augment our understand of music creative and also understand our experience about life. So that's it.